Welcome to New Broker, the podcast dedicated to providing insights and inspiration for building a new broking business.
Hello and welcome back to New Broker. I'm your host for today, Annie Kane. And in this week's episode, I'm speaking to a finance and mortgage broker down from Victoria at Empire Finance Mortgage Brokers in the form of Jay Nash. Now, Jay's been broking for just about a year, just over a year. And last year was one of the finalists for the New Broker of the Year category at the Better Business Awards. And so in this episode of New Broker, we're picking his brain about what it is that he's been doing to delight his clients, how he's been building his brokerage down in Victoria, and what he has planned for the future. Thanks for joining me, Jay. How are you going?
Good, thanks, Annie. Thanks for having me on. I've been a long time listener, so it's great to be on, and yeah, looking forward to unpacking the first year that was.
Yeah, I love talking to people who've been listening to the podcast for a while and then kind of having a full circle moment when they come on the podcast themselves. It's always a lot of fun. And you mentioned about having listened to the podcast for a while and only really having been a broker since, was it early 2025?
Yeah, February last year, end of Feb, I left the bank and started a broker. So yeah, I'd had plans to do it, and look, I was listening to the advisor well before I became a broker, just to get ideas and see how other people were doing things. So it's really been a staple for me in setting me up for that first year.
Yay. Well, I'm glad that we can now bring you on the podcast. And also, because you have been a listener, you probably know all the things that you wanted to know that we should be talking about. So I'll be taking some direction from you. If there's anything that you think brokers that are listening or potential brokers are listening to this that might be really helpful for them that you wanted to know when you were listening, then feel free to chuck them in.
Absolutely.
But first off, you mentioned you were in banking first. So you have actually had lots of experience in the in the financial services space before you kind of became a broker. So working for major banks like Westpac, and smaller banks like Bendigo Bank for a long time, and really being that kind of relationship manager and personal banker. So customer service, I feel like it's already in your DNA. But what was the kind of turning point for you to be like, yes, I'm going to become a broker? What was it in 2025 that you were like, yeah, this is the time?
Yeah, well, it actually probably went back a little bit further than that. I guess just to touch on my background. So I suppose out of school, thought I wanted to be an accountant. So started studying and working at a local accounting firm. Did that for about a year and a half, and I don't know, I just wasn't really enjoying it. So I put uni on hold, got a job in the bank at Westpac. So predominantly that was personal banking. So, opening accounts, a little bit of personal lending, but heavily focused on the customer discussion piece, and I was really enjoying that. Did that for about 3 years, and an assistant manager role came up at Bendigo Bank in the business banking team, and thought I'd throw my hat in the ring. Got the role, which I think just having that accounting background helped a little bit there. Yeah, did the assistant role for about 3 years and got promoted to a manager role. So essentially what I was doing was traveling around the region, looking after different branches and more specifically business banking clients. Yeah, and during that time, I was fortunate enough to be recognised as the National Small Business Banker of the Year. So, and it was sort of around that time that a lot of banks started reaching out, especially like recruitment teams. And I'm always one that if someone asks me to have a coffee, I never say no. So I'd sort of spoken to all the major banks in a period of about 3 months, and the guys at ANZ, it just seemed like a really good fit for me. So jumped over to ANZ in their commercial team. So I did that for about another 4 years, and that was sort of my, my introduction to the broking world. At the time, Bendigo Bank weren't dealing with brokers, so I sort of had to learn, I guess, where brokers would fit into the scenario, especially, not wanting to step on toes with customers and that sort of stuff. And yeah, I was just always curious about the industry. And it was during 2024, ANZ went through a major restructure. And, it was that time I just thought, I've been through restructures plenty of times in banking. I think I can do this lending piece pretty well. So yeah, started looking into the broker world and how that would look for me. And, I think looking back now, I guess every step of the way through the accounting, personal banking, and into business banking, that was sort of, I look back as, I guess, the apprenticeship to really launch into the broking world.
Yeah. So you decided to make the leap. And of course, one of the first big decisions as a new broker is, well, what kind of model do I want to have? Do I want to go to a branded brokerage? Do I want to start my own business? What was your thought process for, kind of becoming a broker and choosing the route that you went down?
Yeah, and that was one I put a lot of thought into as well. So, for me, I was probably a little bit naive, I think. I'd sort of thought I've had a good banking career. I'm always hitting targets. I probably don't need to go in and work for wages. So I thought initially I've always wanted to be a business owner. So I'd actually approached a few different brokers around the area just to sort of see how that would look to either whether it be buy in or join as a broker with some sort of shareholding.
Mhm.
And there was a couple of offers there, but there was just a few things that didn't really sit too well with me. So I just thought if I'm going to do it, I'm going all in on my own, starting at zero, and just went for it. I think it's obviously a bigger risk. You've got to really learn every step of the way taking that path. And, it was a big piece of work in that first year, but I'm definitely glad that's the path I went down.
You were saying that some of the things didn't sit right with you. Like, what sort of things were you seeing that you were like, I'm not sure about this?
Yeah. So I think for me, like I know my work ethic and probably what I can bring to the table, I guess. And, I'm one that if I've got a lot of work to do, I'll do it at night. I'm not afraid to put myself out there, ask for business. So, I guess, while uh, I guess, everything I do, it's more a case of it's now benefiting me.
Mm.
If I was working with others that, switch off at 5 o'clock and that's it for them. I just don't think that would sit right with me, knowing that I'm a hustler and I'll just keep working to get things done. So, yeah, again, that's why I just went all in on my own venture.
Yeah. So you started Empire Finance as a sort of Empire Finance mortgage brokers, and
Yes.
you're a mortgage and finance broker. So I guess all of that business knowledge kind of coming in from your banking days as well. So you're providing both business and resi loans. What's the split between the two?
Yeah, yeah. So I keep a pretty good track on it all. So current financial year to date, I've settled about 65. That'll get closer to 70 mil towards the end of the year. But in terms of breakdown, it's about 75% residential. Um, And I know, you'll quite often hear a lot of business bankers turn broker and, really just want to continue to be business bankers. But, residential and property has always been something that I've been interested in myself. And honestly, I'm really enjoying that space. So whether it's helping first home buyers, all the way through to, I've done it all, I think, reverse mortgages, bridging. Yeah, it's been pretty full on. And I don't know. It's been really rewarding helping those, especially first home buyers. Like they're so appreciative to help them get their first house. And, you know, I think back of my journey when I bought my first house, and there's a lot of advice I didn't have. So I think just being in their corner has been very rewarding. So I'm enjoying the resi space, but yeah, still keeping that focus on commercial. So that's about 20% of what I've done as well. And asset finance, it's at about 5%.
You mentioned there about 60 to 70 mil a year. Could you give me a number of loans just so people who might not have a Victorian sized average loan will understand what that means in terms of the actual sort of size of loan that you're writing a year?
Yeah, yeah. And I think as well, so I'm regional based, so Shepparton's home for me. So I think, look, typically, the average purchase price of a house is a bit lower than the metro areas. So currently it's about 150 loans year to date.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, it's been a lot of work, and sometimes I look back and I don't know how I've got through it all, but yeah, I think it's definitely tough as a solo broker, but yeah, hopefully the next year looks a little bit different to me.
So you're a connected broker, are you?
Connective, yes.
Yeah. So how did you choose your aggregator?
Yeah, so initially I was pretty set on one aggregator. It wasn't connective, and that was purely just because I knew other brokers with them. It seemed to work. And again, just being naive, I sort of thought the support is what it is. The fees are what they are. They're all going to be similar. So I really didn't look into it too much. And then talking to another broker, they suggested just talking to their BDM for, for a comparison. Um, and I was still set on that particular aggregator, so I'd even done their paperwork, submitted it in, and I put my name down for a connective webinar, but never actually joined. And yeah, I had one of the onboarders give me a call, and shout out to Aisha Thurston. Yeah, and she just called me out of the blue, just asked about why I didn't jump on, if I was interested in becoming a broker. And we spoke for about an hour. And I'd never really got that support from any other aggregator or that level of information. So just gut feel, it felt right to me to go with Connective for that reason. And look, they've been great to me so far. Like the support's been good. They're investing heavily in tech and improvements to their CRM. Things like their borrowing capacities completely changed since I've been a broker.
Mm.
So yeah, they're doing some good stuff as well. So I'm pretty happy with that decision.
So I'm guessing the original aggregate that you went down was also a wholesale aggregate, wasn't a branded one.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
because you were
Um,
set on having your own business.
yeah, yeah. And I think again, it sort of comes back to your background, I believe. If you're jumping into the mortgage broking industry with no networks or lending experience, perhaps maybe, like a loan market branded thing may work better. The likes of Aussies where they do have those I guess, lead generation machines through the website and so forth. But again, I just sort of thought, knowing my history and what I've done, um, again, I'm just going to jump all in on and back myself and yeah, go for it from there.
Well, the first kind of hurdle you have, I suppose, when you start out in as a new business owner is finding business and getting your first loans written. So how did you go about generating new business?
Yeah, so I knew it'd be tough. Again, obviously, I think lending's a different beast. Like as much as people do or, may want to use you in the past, it's got to be the right time for them. So just little things like in the background, I'd given notice at the bank and they'd asked me to just work that last month out. So I sort of spent that while I did the right thing, continued to work. After hours, I was really drilling down on what I needed to do to market myself, things like social media. I was adding a lot of past clients on LinkedIn and Facebook and so forth, just so when I was ready to launch things, they would see what was going on. So yeah, I knew for me, social media was going to be a big piece of that, and it's really helped me, I suppose, build that business early and yeah, really get some leads through the door that way.
Yeah. And so did you kind of, I mean, the one of the things I suppose you had a sort of advantage of is knowing already how to talk to small business owners and knowing how to have that kind of deep dive into their finances. But is there anything that you were kind of finding surprising when you first became a broker that you're a bit like, oh, I'm not prepared for this, or like I didn't realize it was going to be like this?
Yeah, probably a couple of things. I suppose, and my early days could be different to a lot of others, and I'm very grateful for it. But, I was very overwhelmed early in terms of the volumes that were coming through. So I think as a lender, I knew how to talk to clients and what the end result needed to be, but everything else in between in terms of, finding lender policies, doing valuations, pricing, all of those things were new to me. So I suppose again, being a solo broker and not having a team to sort of guide you and tell you where you should be going with things, I probably struggled with that early days and perhaps didn't ask or lean on others for support as much as I should have. So yeah, I think that was obviously a good problem to have, absolutely. But yeah, it's just that I know again talking to clients and what the end result needs to be, but everything else in between was foreign to me.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we hear quite a lot, particularly from people who have prior learning, who kind of come from the finance industry and move into broking. You don't have to have a mentor necessarily if you're not from out of industry. But a lot of people go, I kind of wish I did because of that exact reason. Being like, I thought I had all the knowledge, but then it actually come to, using all the systems or understanding where things are, how you find certain policies. They're kind of like, a whole different beast. So yeah, I always think that's really interesting hearing that from people who've come from finance to move into broking and then go, actually, there's a lot here that I didn't know that I didn't know.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think on that, like I suppose, I'd considered having a mentor and I suppose, yeah, it was sort of just another cost that again, me just being naive and thinking I understand lending, I'll be right. I'm definitely made some costly mistakes where I probably lost deals because I say submitted it to the wrong bank or
Mm,
timing. So yeah, I'm sure if I had a mentor, it would have paid for itself well and truly over and over again.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd definitely consider that again if I was to start from scratch.
What was your first deal that you settled? Can you remember?
Yeah, and it was probably again a little bit different. It was actually an asset finance contract. Yeah, so starting in the Feb, first settlement went through in the April. So that was an old client I'd managed maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Wanted to buy a new car. seen what I was doing on social media, so reached out. And at the time, asset finance, it's a little bit different in that a lot of the banks want to see volumes before they'll give you accreditation. Um, so I'd always spoken to a lot of brokers and, they'd said Westpac is the go-to. That's where you should go with it. And I didn't have accreditation. So I just asked one of the brokers I knew if they can send me the phone number of their BDM. Spoke to him for about half an hour, just told him my background, what I was looking to focus on, and he gave me accreditation. And yeah, that month I ended up doing 5 cars through Westpac. So I think when you do go out on your own, you've got to take control of things. And I could have probably sat back and maybe not got the best outcome, but I thought, what, no one's going to save me for me. So I started calling BDMs, trying to push accreditations through quicker, and got things done that way.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, a lot of the lenders are really open to, particularly for people who've come from finance already, from banking, they're pretty keen to get them on board quickly. If you're eager to write a loan with them, they're like, yeah, we want you. But it's interesting that you started then with asset finance loans, car loans, because obviously now your bread and butter is resi. But what a great way of getting money in the door quite early as well, because they are much shorter turnaround times. Did you do that on purpose, or was it just that once you'd written that first loan, you're like, now I know how to do them, I'm just going to do them all the time?
Yeah, no, it wasn't intentional at all. And it's definitely been a key part of what I do. While residential's been where most of my attention's been, I'm doing a lot of home loans for self-employed people. So naturally, a lot of self-employed people may have a car or two. Depending on the business, they might have other equipment. So it's really just making sure that you can be that go-to person for everything they need. And as you say, it is the quick win. So there's always that lag with home loans. If you talk to someone today, their loan might settle 3 months and then you'll get paid the month after. So to have those car loans settle in month 2, it really just helped those cash flow pressures of not having money coming in after leaving your salary.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, I'd like to talk about how you actually now write your loans. You mentioned social media already, so I want to know what you're doing on that. Plus, the things that you're doing, the tools and tech that you're using in your business, if at all. And we'll get into that just after this break. So, Jay, you mentioned there that some of your clients had seen you on social media. What are you doing on socials? How are you generating business and awareness that way?
Yeah, so like I said, it was always going to be a key focus for me. So, again, just listening to the advisor and following some other brokers, I'd really seen what was working for them. And I guess not that, you've still got to be yourself and be genuine, but just seeing the type of content being put out, I probably wasn't seeing too many other people in, regional Victoria doing the same thing. So, I was trying to post 2, 3 times a week, and even towards Christmas this year, I decided I was really going to ramp that up and try and post daily. So it's really just a case of, there'll be times where you really don't know what you should be posting. So I always just go back to, what's a discussion I had with the client during the day? What questions are people asking me at meetings? And really just trying to put some valuable content out there. It's very uncomfortable early days. I remember the first reel that I made, I waited till the wife and kids were out of the house, set up the camera, probably did 5 or 6 takes to try and get it right. And, it really is just the more you do it, the easier it gets. Now I could probably smash one out, edit it in 5 minutes, and I just schedule it and post it. So, that's been a key to, I guess, just being front of mind for a lot of people. And it's funny, you'll see someone say, follow you on social media. Week or 2 later, they'll start liking stuff, and then all of a sudden you get a meeting booked in your calendar. And it's a trend that I've seen too many times, that while I don't love doing the social media stuff, it's working, so I'm just going to keep it up.
Yeah, awesome. And Shepparton's interesting. The only thing I know about Shepparton is that it floods. So it's the only time I ever hear anything about it. I'm like, it floods a lot. What is the sort of environment like? What's the housing situation like there? Like, what are your kind of borrowers looking at? What are they engaging with on your social media?
Yeah. So I think what I'm sort of getting from the social media is a lot of first home buyers around. And I think just being in the industry for so long, I've got a lot of contacts in terms of real estate agents, accountants. So people have always known what I've done, but it really hasn't been until I started my own venture that people would truly reach out and be like, hey, I've got, a client looking to do this. You're happy to help out. So I think naturally, people in Shepparton, they like supporting locals doing good things. The population is not huge, but wider Shepparton, there's a lot of smaller towns around. And I think just working in the bank and being on the road 2 or 3 days a week in these smaller towns has really just opened up that network. And it's been good to see just the level of support that people around the area are giving.
Yeah. Did you ever consider moving anywhere else? Like, or were you like, this is my home, I'm going to stay here?
No, I did. I was actually born up in Queensland,
All right.
but moved back down with family when I was younger. Um, when I started studying accounting, I thought Melbourne was the goal for me. I wanted to work in one of the big accounting firms down there. And I actually tried to buy my first, I was 20 years old and I was heading down to auctions, looking to buy 1 bedroom, small apartments. And I'd go to auctions and they'd just sell for way above, what they were listed at. And yeah, I always wanted to be a homeowner. So switched the focus back to Shepparton to buy a house. Bought my first house here when I was 20. And yeah, Shep's been home for me ever since. And as much as I'd, love to move up to Queensland on the beach or something like that, we've got all our families here, got a good friend group. So we're happy here.
Yeah, awesome. And of course, when it comes to then like, writing all your deals and kind of getting all the terms and conditions and the compliance all checked off, like there's a lot involved in getting your loans settled. When you came to actually kind of writing your first loans, was there ever a point where you were like, maybe I'll just hire somebody else? Like, did you start with a team or have you got a team now?
Yeah, so started just as a solo broker, so just me. And I think the momentum built really quickly. I went through many phases where I'd felt well and truly burnt out, just juggling all the deals on the go. And I'd always heard other brokers talk about hiring early and make sure you do it before you need it. And I'd sort of got to a point where I was just so under the pump. I didn't know how I would be in a position to train someone up to do the role when I'm still learning myself. I think it got to around November, December last year, and I decided that I think I was going to look to go offshore, to look at options there. Went to an agency, interviewed a few people in the Philippines, and they were just really green and had never worked in the mortgage broking industry. So I didn't know how I would be in a position to, train someone remotely. Again, also learning myself. And I was talking to another broker about that, and they actually suggested going through a different company. And I'd had a chat to them, and they've actually come in and built out our whole workflow in Mercury. But they've also sourced 2 really good offshore loan processors. So they've been able to plug in straight away. They know the connective system. They're all over the compliance. So, they're actually following me up on, have I got this off the client? So it's been great. They're, both 2 really good operators that I can see working well. And they've only been on for a month now. So, I think the next 12 months, hopefully that's going to make my life a lot easier,
Yeah.
but also be able to handle the volumes, but focus my time on where it's going to add more value.
Can I ask which company you end up using?
So Octus went with Christian Patterson.
Yeah.
He came highly recommended from another broker, and he's been great. So they just jumped into Mercury and they have built out our whole platform so that at each stage of the loan process, the client keeps informed, but also the offshore loan processors know where it's at and what needs to be done next.
Yeah, amazing. And I think this is again like something that so many brokers, as you mentioned, juggle with, is being like, oh, I kind of need support staff, but I don't really want to, and I don't want the cost burden. Did you hire them full time, part time, per file? How did you kind of bring them on?
Yeah, so they're full time. So essentially they're contracted to us. They are paid fortnightly. I think for now they've obviously jumped in, started with new clients, and we're getting them through to settlement now. So we're working on what that looks like in terms of perhaps one will focus on that application through to approval, and the other one will do the post.
Settlement.
Yeah, exactly. And also be doing loan reviews. So we're really happy with how they are so far.
So was that always in your plan? Like, did you have a business plan when you started going, I want to get to this number of loans before I employ people, or going, this is what I want my business to look like in terms of number of staff, or did you just kind of do it organically?
Yeah, definitely organic. I knew I never really wanted to be a solo broker forever. The good thing is, I suppose costs are low. Depending how many loans you write, you've got very minimal overheads as a solo broker. So, it's good to see the money coming in and the profits pretty much go straight to you. But it got to a point where I knew I needed help if I was going to continue trying to write that same amount of volumes. And for me, I've always known, multiple heads are better than one. So I think now if I can take a lot of that admin away from my day to day, I can focus my time on whether it be spending, more time with accountants or real estate agents. We don't have any referral agreements or anything set up at the moment. So that's something perhaps I'll look at in the future. But yeah, for now, I can definitely see me getting a little bit more time back. And yeah, it's definitely going to make my life easier into year 2.
Yeah. And then looking at how you actually kind of build referral partnerships as well. So this is, again, something we've been talking a lot about in the recent New Broker Academy Roadshow we did, was kind of saying, well, how do you establish a referral partnership, particularly for people who already have broker referrers? So how did you go about doing it? Was it you just lent on the people you already knew? Did you have to make new referral partners? Like, how did you go about finding, accountants or financial planners, real estate agents to refer your business, or maybe for you to refer business to?
Yeah, so a little bit of obviously, yeah, just my history with what I've done. Sort of being a staple business banker in the area. A lot of accountants, again, knew what I did, but they weren't really sending deals my way in the bank. And yeah, as soon as I'd left, I think just again, maybe it's a Shepparton thing, but people like supporting people that have a crack. And I think a lot of accountants have sent deals my way, and it's not a case of paying them X amount for a deal. A lot of just sending them my way because they know it'll get done. So I think, when you get that first opportunity from an accountant or real estate agent, you just really got to do a good job of it. Keep everyone updated on what's happening. And, I think more and more people are inclined to refer things on if they know it's going to be handled well, as opposed to the remuneration that may come off that. So again, we don't have any referral partnerships or anything set up. It's just based on trust at this stage. But, I think that's something I'd like to look into in future, just to, I suppose, reward them for sending something our way and, just seeing a bit more volume in that area.
Yeah. And when it comes to then like tools and tech, and this is something we've been talking about a lot, both on the Advisor and our sister publication Broker Daily, is looking at, well, maybe last year it was the beginning of AI. Now everybody uses AI, but for different reasons, different parts of their life, maybe not just business, but in kind of real everyday life. Do you use any technology or artificial intelligence in what you're doing day to day?
A little bit of ChatGPT. That's probably about it. I think, yeah, ChatGPT has become a bit of a business partner for me. I'll often, talk into it with an idea I might have, or even if it's social media, you can get it to give you a real script if you're really wanting to, but not just on the social media side. I guess just even advice on whether it be drafting emails, things like that. But outside of that, I guess in the broking world, I'm still pretty basic. So the tools that I have with Connective is about all I use at the moment. Like I said, their borrowing capacity calculator is pretty good. I've ran numbers on that and then compared it to a lender calculator, and if it's a few dollars out, I'm happy with that. A lot of people talk about Quickly, which I just haven't given it the time I probably should at this stage. So, maybe that's a tool I'll look into in future. But I think with what Connective have given, I've been able to do that volume of loans without too much trouble at this stage. So introducing new tech at this stage is probably something I don't really want to handle, but I'm definitely open. If I talk to another broker and they say this is unreal, you need to be using it, I'm going to give it a shot, or at least look into it.
And it's also, it's a pat on the back for Connective there. If you're like, I don't need to use anything else, I'm obviously doing a good job. So that's good for them. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about how else you kind of engage with the community, the challenges and opportunities you're seeing in the broking industry at the moment, and your plans for the year ahead. And we'll get into that just after this break. So Jay, you mentioned already about, lots of people in your community at Shepparton finding you through socials, but do you do any kind of community engagement? Have you kind of done any advertising locally, or are you all online?
Yeah, so honestly, pretty much a lot of what I do is just online. So I don't, I sublease an office in town. I don't have any signage or anything like that. Yeah, it's sort of all just organically been online. And honestly, if I was to look at, say, signage, the first thing I'm going to do is go on Instagram, look at local, sign writers, see what they've been doing. So I suppose try to engage with people the way I would do it myself. And it tends to be, I notice anyone from the age of 20 through till 50, that is where they're spending time. And that is a lot of I guess, the market I've been dealing with. Outside of that, no, look, I've got three young kids, so we're always at school sports. We're always, doing bits and pieces. And it doesn't matter where I go, someone will ask me about mortgages. We're at a barbecue not too long ago, and someone asked me about if they want to buy an investment property, what I need to be doing. So, I think, yeah, it's just about being out and about, and yeah, you've just got to show your face different places.
I got asked a question the other day, which maybe you might be able to answer. It was actually at the New Broker Academy, and someone was saying to me, I don't know how to have the conversation at a barbecue where I tell them I'm a broker, but not sound too salesy. And also sometimes, I guess like if you meet a doctor out in the wild, they don't necessarily want to talk about your illnesses and ailments. So do you ever kind of go, you can book into my calendar? Like, how do you deal with that conversation if it's kind of, going to take up time? Are you like happy to chat about it and go into the nitty gritty there and then? Or do you kind of go, actually, can you book into my calendar and we'll talk about this on Monday?
Yeah, a bit of both. I mean, it sort of depends on how the discussion flows.
When it comes to then the industry as a whole, so we've kind of covered off how you've been generating business and how you've been writing business, but how have you found broking industry as a whole? Like, do you think, is it what you expected? Is it any challenges or opportunities that kind of surprised you?
Yeah, I think just the level of support. There's so much people willing to give their time, and that includes other brokers, BDMs, people within, your aggregator. If you call someone, it tends to be that everyone is happy to tell you, you know, everything they know about what they do. And I've got so many brokers that I've lent on over the last 12 months that have just given me advice on, how they would do things. And I think for me, I was often scared to try and take their time because at the end of the day, especially other brokers, we're somewhat in competition, but I like to think I'm friends with a lot of brokers as well. But, people are just so supportive in the industry, and I just didn't really expect that. So like I said, I was a bit scared to and hesitant to call people at the start. But if I'm unsure of something now, there's probably five brokers that I'll go to for different things, and they're more than happy to answer questions I've got.
Yeah, it is a wonderfully warm and welcoming industry. I think everyone who's in it, particularly because so many people are small business owners, they're kind of very empathetic, which is lovely, lovely to see. And of course, we appreciate it for the podcast as well. Everyone sharing all their top tips and secrets. Is there anything that you kind of think is a massive opportunity at the moment? I mean, we're at the turn of financial year, beginning of a new one. Like it's sort of a weird time in the market with mortgage demand and rates being quite high and people being a little bit maybe hesitant to get into market because house prices are super high. Are you seeing anywhere where you're like, actually, there's a huge amount of business coming from this particular segment of borrower or this type of lending?
Yeah, and I think as you said, just with what's going on, obviously rates have increased. A lot of talk around the budget and so forth. So I think on the mortgages side, I've definitely noticed things have slowed down a little bit. But obviously having that business banking background and be able to focus time with business owners as well. I've still got plenty of opportunity there. Obviously end of financial year, we've got a lot of cars and equipment settling this month. So I guess, if you didn't have that, say, background or not looking at business or asset finance, you're potentially missing out on some opportunities there. So, while the mortgages side is down, business is still doing well. So, it's sort of good to be able to focus time where it's needed there.
Yeah. And is there anything like if you were king of the broking industry for a day, is there anything you'd like to change to make it better?
It's a tough one. I mean, obviously, I'm still learning the industry. A lot of brokers talk about clawbacks being a bugbear, but I understand why they need to be there. There are some lenders that have a bit more of a tiered system in terms of that percentage of clawback reducing on a monthly basis,
Pro
which
rata, yeah.
maybe perhaps something like that might, if that was, I guess, industry wide. But, for me, I'm still learning the industry myself. So at this stage, yeah, I don't have too much else to add there.
Yeah. And you mentioned right at the beginning of this podcast that, when you were kind of thinking about which avenue you wanted to go down in terms of your business strategy, that you were a bit like, I want to set my own hours. I want to create my own business and kind of build my own value, basically, from my hard work. But of course, that can entail a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears. What does your weekly, hourly workload look like? Do you work 5 days, 6 days, part-time? How do you kind of actually get through what you need to get through?
Yeah, and it is a tricky one. like I said, I've got three young kids. So for me, I guess spare time is pretty slim. Quite often I'll wake up, it's get the kids ready for school, either do the school or daycare drop off, and I'm in the office between 8:30 and 9. I'm always out the door at 5 o'clock. That was sort of a non-negotiable for me coming into this industry. And then it's very much, again, family time, get the kids to sleep. And if I've got more work to do, which for the last year it's been more often than not, I'll might have to plug away for another hour or two. But yeah, I try to avoid working on weekends as well. That time's pretty sacred for family. But yeah, I think it's a tough one. I feel I'm always working to some degree. Whether it is getting texts or checking emails, it's hard to truly switch off. That's something I need to get better at. But yeah, I think it's going to be different for everyone in different stages of life. But for me, yeah, I've had to do that sort of after hours work just to keep on top of things. But again, we're making the right moves in terms of getting the loan processes on board to try and help that next 12 months be a little bit easier.
Yeah. Is there anything that you do when you have had a really stressful week to kind of shake off that stress? Do you have any pastime hobbies, or is it just playing with kids? Like, what do you do?
Obviously a lot of kid time, but yeah, I like to try and keep fit as well. So quite often, I'll try to go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. I enjoy running as well. So, weekends I'll often try and do a long, say, 2-hour run. And for me, once I get that done, I feel like I can then sort of switch off and yeah, spend time with the family. So I think, yeah, you've got to be able to do something for yourself. And for me, I just really enjoy spending family time. So whether that's little getaways in our caravan or heading to the beach. Yeah, you've always got to try and do stuff for yourself.
You've got a caravan that will fit you, your wife, and your three kids.
It's got 3 bunks in there. Yeah. Yep.
I was like, wow, you mustn't be just piled into one bed. Yeah.
No.
Wow, it's a big caravan. Did you finance that yourself?
The business has done pretty well the last 12 months, so I didn't need finance for it. But
Oh,
yeah, no, we love camping and the kids love it as well. So we'll often, whether it is just a weekend away, we're pretty lucky where we are. There's a lot of, say, caravan parks, or we've got lots of rivers we can pull up on. So we're pretty lucky there.
yeah. When you look forward then to the future, so you've done your first 18 months or so of broking, you've made it through the hardest part. So congratulations. What are you going to do next? Like, what are your plans for continuing to grow? Have you got, a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan?
Um, Look, I haven't thought that far ahead, to be honest. So yeah, look, obviously year one is survival mode. You do what you have to do. So I think the next 12 months for me is very much about getting my processes right. Like I said, looking out for potential referral opportunities and really trying to drill down on that. Um, I like the idea of bringing in another broker or credit writer. And I think just with the momentum we've got, I can potentially see that happening in the next 12 months. But yeah, I think the right people reach out at the right time, and I'll just take it as it comes. But yeah, for now, just trying to keep the volumes up and yeah, really just enjoy helping clients. So everyone that comes my way, I try to give them the best experience they can, and yeah, we just want to keep that up.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, just in closing, I normally ask people for their advice for new brokers when it comes to succeeding in broking. But seeing as you were listening to this before you became a broker, was there anything that you really wanted to know while you were listening, like that you think would help people who are listening and thinking about becoming a broker?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. Like obviously a lot of people talk about having a cash buffer there. And, I don't think you can have that big enough because the stress of not having money and settlements coming in, that on top of learning the industry, learning how to do new things. I guess the bigger that cash buffer is, the longer time frame you've got to get it right. But I guess also just not being afraid to ask for help. Like I know I spent days on deals that I probably could have figured out the answers to if I wasn't afraid to call someone. And like I said, there's so much support out there. So, if you've got a scenario you're unsure of, just jump on the phone to someone and people are more than happy to help.
Lovely. Well, Jay, thanks so much for sharing your story here on New Broker. And it was wonderful to meet you at the New Broker Academy as well. Best of luck for your future growth plans. And we look forward to seeing where your career takes you next.
Thanks, Annie. Really appreciate it.
If you've got any questions for me or for Jay, then do feel free to reach out. You can reach me at editor@theadvisor.com.au and Jay Nash at Empire Finance Mortgage Brokers over in Shepparton. And if you have any other things that you want to know, do feel free to leave us a comment or drop us a line on the podcast provider of choice. We love to hear your feedback on the podcast and what you'd like to hear most from our guests. We hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next time for another episode on the Advisor Podcast Network.